Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Caitlin, Florian, and Carson's performance of the selection of Lieder from Gustav Mahler's Das Knaben Wunderhorn as much as I did. And I am delighted to be joined by them and by John Warner in order to discuss their preparations for our international joint recital between the Gustav Mahler Society UK and Carson's channel Pontiac Enchanté. And I think to begin with, the first question about the choice of leader goes to Caitlin and Florian.
Well, thank you first and foremost for inviting us into this amazing project. We were delighted, and when we thought Mahler, there are a number of things that spring to mind for so and a tenor, and we just thought this Lied von der Erde is a little too long and
Yes.
doesn't really work in this format. And these songs, Knaben Wunderhorn, are so varied, they're so lively that you get a lot of different kinds of singing, a lot of different emotions coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even though I'm a musicologist by training, I think that our choice was mostly driven by the question, how do we get a balance of uplifting and heavy music in one program?
Yes.
So that we can, in a time of a pandemic, it would be probably awkward to just run a program with very heavy music,
or
and so
only joyful stuff,
or only joyful stuff. That would also not really show the variety of the collection of songs that we're talking about. So I think first and foremost, what was driving is, on one hand, an emotional connection to some of the songs, which is strong for either of us. So in my case, it was absolutely Wo die schönen Trompeten blasen. This is one of my most favorite songs ever.
Yeah, but me too, and I wanted to sing it, but I get
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
It's true.
Yeah. You see, as an Austrian tenor, Florian, because you are very much in touch with the tradition of the Viennese tradition of music, and from your perspective in particular, in that sense, I don't know what these Lieder mean to you particularly. This is late Romantic reworking of these works by, as I said, which started at the beginning of the century, the Napoleonic period. How do you view them as works, and with the changes which Mahler made, of course, during his lifetime to these pieces?
Well, what I always find incredibly touching with Mahler is that kind of element of folk music that it has. The element of the sounds and the lines and the rhythms of Austrian music. And when I say Austrian music, of course, in that case, I speak about the Austrian Empire back then. So with his Bohemian influences and with all the dances and lines that Mahler uses so brilliantly, and puts this romantic orchestration or those romantic harmonies and colors underneath them. And of course, from an emotional kind of sense, there are, especially also in the Knaben Wunderhorn collection, there is also this kind of military background when we talk about Tambursksel or Wo die schönen Trompeten blasen, which I mean, the songs were written slightly before the First World War, but with this kind of soldier tradition in the back, with the knowledge that there is, in this kind of profession of being a soldier, there is the very big potential of being killed.
Yes.
And kind of view into death that has a big contrast with the joy of life as well. I find that very, very interesting. In this kind of regard, that is something that surely speaks very strongly for this collection as well. And another aspect for the choice of songs was surely the colors that we thought we could make and could transport through that very, very special medium.
Their vocal they ask you to do different things vocally, and it's quite fun to have that variety of speed or range. He doesn't spare the singer. He really asks you to use your full voice, and I really like that you get a lot of contrast.
Excellent. What I loved about your performance was, and this is the opera element, I think, it's bringing it to life with the time of the music and the expression. Now I see you going off to the gallows there, you see. Florian, you say with a serious look at it, you really got it, you know. But also, as I love with the, you know, the more humorous ones as well, as a duet, it's that perfect sort of idea of the lovers or whatever. You know, you got it really down to a T. But
it has to have an element of fun.
Yeah.
It has to have an element of fun, and that doesn't take away to take the materials very seriously. But it is there has to be that element of enjoying what's written.
Story.
Yes.
And telling the story.
The texts are so much fun, and to tell deliver the text with the story is it's our job. That's what we're
but that's exactly what I got out of it. I was left with a smile on my face afterwards. But if we go through each of these, and the first one is Es sungen drei Engel ein süßen Gesang. That's yours, Florian. This is quite challenging, I think, for the tenor to sing.
Yeah, I mean, to be absolutely honest, they are all challenging for the tenor because, of course, it's in the lower range of my voice.
Yes.
Which is a challenge and a gift because it also allows me to play a bit more with my darker colors, with my baritonal part of my voice. And that's really a very nice and very fun thing to do. And especially with the Sungen drei Engel, where you have this joyful, uplifting start, and then a very kind of heavy, laden with guilt kind of middle section, but then you come back to the solution in the end. You know, you can come out of the misery if you keep up. And of course, I mean, no matter what faith you are believing in or what your background is, you kind of, as an artist, you always need to take it in for yourself. You need to absolutely believe what you say in this regard. And so the beauty of showing that contrast of what shall I do if I really have put some guilt on my life, then there is always there is a way out. If I turn towards God in this kind of belief system, then this is the way out, and this is the joyful part in the end. So there's no heaviness left.
Yeah.
And of course, that's also a very Austrian way of thinking.
Naturally.
In Austria, as people might know, especially in Vienna, the view on death is always a very, very two-sided one. So there is a very joyful look at the death as your companion and your friend, and there's nothing to worry about. But there is a bit of sentimentality about losing life in the end. But it's always I think it's very unique to Vienna, actually, to have this nearly easy and relaxed way of looking at the end of your life.
Yes, it comes up again in Urlicht, if I can jump to that one.
Please, yes.
The idea of an angel coming to the path towards thee and saying, no, it's not your time yet, go away, go back. And the soul says, no, but I want to go to the end path. That's where I want to head. So much more positive wish to reach that goal of death. Very odd in some traditions, but here it has space.
It's probably in our Western tradition, but this kind of longing and knowing there's going to be a good end.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a faith.
Yes, and I think you did that absolutely beautifully.
It's absolutely beautifully sung. As I say, I was really absolutely taken with that, and all your singing. Yeah, definitely.
With keeping that positive spirit at the end of Urlicht is something that you have to do. It's a good thing. Don't worry, it's really a good thing not to get too heavy at that end. I think it's really, really marvelous.
Bit of a special song, and Carsten did such an extraordinary job of the orchestration.
Yeah.
You know, with that. in your ear, the different colors. I thought we had this couple of rehearsals and then it was just there. It was very, very easy for me to sing with what Carson supplied. After we had discussed it. It's fantastic.
That's excellent. And Carson, I know with the transcription of this for the purposes of this performance, I'm sure this must be a little bit of a challenge in doing that as well.
Somewhat, but I think something that's interesting about these piano parts is that, I mean, most of these songs were written originally as songs for voice and piano. They weren't written as orchestral songs, but the piano parts that we now have for them are not the parts that Mahler actually originally wrote. The parts that we have are transcriptions taken from the later orchestral settings. So actually the way I view it is they give you quite a lot of latitude as a pianist to, in a way, like rewrite is too extreme a term for it, but sort of reimagine how those sounds can work on the piano. So actually, yes. Urlik was a good example of a piece where I did quite a lot of things with the score that are not actually in the piano part that I was using, but that I think reflect better the kind of breadth and sort of depth of the orchestration. So a lot more bass notes than you'll actually see in the score, chords much thicker, trying to do as much as I can to imitate the sort of brass choir sound of it. So yeah, so I think Caitlin and I came together pretty well on that piece.
Yes. And so with the recording that first of all, and then of course with singing it and joining that together with John, this is your department in the engineering and editing side of things. How did you find that? Because you have quite a lot of experience of doing this as well.
Yes, kind of the new role of a conductor is coordinating musicians from the other side of the planet instead of in the same room. Well, I mean, you know, with such a good trio of musicians, there really was almost nothing to do. I think they worked very hard, by the sound of things, on agreeing exactly how they wanted to perform it between them. So by the time Carson set down the piano track and then they sang along to it, they fitted together perfectly, really. Yeah.
Excellent. The other thing, just going quickly through some of these other leads, I don't want to detain everyone too much because, of course, we want to listen to the songs themselves. And this Lob des hohen Verstandnes, this is a real dig at the Viennese establishment, is it? This is still the case nowadays, I wonder, from the Australian and Austrian point of view in Vienna. Or is it a little bit more easygoing than it used to be?
You might say that. I couldn't possibly comment. Certainly, the text has a subtext. The idea that the easel is a judge, gets to choose who has the better idea, in effect. And it goes with the cuckoo, who is a bit of a sneak, to be honest. We all know that cuckoos, they shove out the eggs and they're a little bit sneaky, shall we say. But he wins the day because he's chosen the easel, who he can persuade, let's say. Very, very apt for today's world, and things change.
I think there's probably a lot of elements of truth in all of that.
Yes.
And as I say, with these ones, there's another thing which, there's a beautiful, like the Rhine Legend. Rhine Legend, which is also a lovely piece. It's a bit of fun. It's probably a little bit trivial, but how did you find that, performing that, Florian?
Oh, the beauty of Rhine Legendchen is really that line and this flowing kind of rhythm and the flow that it has, this kind of the river of Rhine always underneath you, the Neckar or the Rhine or whatever. And I really found that beautiful. And also adding this element of the ring and the story. So it is trivial, but it conveys a bit of a story and a bit of hope and a bit of joy and a very positive feeling. So I think the challenge, but also the big benefit of the sound is this kind of ease and this uplifting quality that it has.
Yes.
Really, if I can say something about that particular song, I think it's also like when you see the title Rhine Legenden and you think about the Rhine and all the kind of heavy meaning that German folklore and culture has invested in that river kind of over the centuries, and then especially with Wagner writing the Ring cycle, that's completely centered around the Rhine and a ring. You're sort of expecting something that has a sense of heaviness and has all of that kind of attached to it, and then you get this very, very light, very easy story that even involves a ring, but in the kind of lightest, most trivial way. I think it's a really kind of fun play against the kind of seriousness that the Rhine has in a lot of other settings.
Yeah. But now, John, you've mentioned something a bit earlier about this whole scenario at the time these Lieder were prepared. Now, they're Mahler being in Hamburg, and well, you can explain the circumstance, which I think is very much relevant to our current circumstances worldwide.
So 1892 was when the what was a worldwide cholera epidemic hit Europe, and the place it hit really badly was Hamburg, which by chance was where Mahler had just got a job as an opera conductor. So when he was writing some of these last songs, at the same time as writing the finale of the Second Symphony, he was basically jumping from flat to hotel around the city, trying to avoid the worst places where the epidemic was happening. So by chance, we picked some of the bits of Mahler which were written when he actually experienced something like what we're all experiencing now. So it's
yes, indeed. Yes, it is. This is really sort of pertinent to everyone. I think that's the other dimension, which is certainly worth mentioning. With the heavy and the light, obviously I think the heaviest, of course, is the Tambourcell, which is that's a tough one of the lead, really, and performed excellently by you, Florian. I find some of these things harrowing, but then, as you so rightly say, you have to have this mixture of heavy and light, and that's what Mahler is. He's exploring all aspects, to my mind, of the human condition. I don't know whether, with your performances of Mahler's music, this is something which comes up clearly with the elements of humanity.
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
Absolutely, undoubtedly. I mean, with the Tambourcell, it is a very interesting one, because when you see the song, when you hear it, when you work on the song, it's the biggest fact for me is not to get too sentimental. So here is a soldier who knows what he's facing and who knows what's going to happen. And he also has to keep his dignity as the person, as not kind of crumbling apart and getting too sentimental and melancholic and saying, poor me. He's kind of standing there, knowing what's going to happen, expressing how scared he is, but kind of taking it. And in the end, with this Gute Nacht, it's really a kind of giving in to what is inevitable in the situation.
Yeah.
And I find it really very, very interesting what's going on here in the piano, for example.
Yes.
I give that over to you, Carsten. It's rather
excellently. Yes.
Yeah. Well, this one actually, along with Urlicht, was another piece where I did quite a lot of things differently from what is actually in the piano score. And the biggest problem for me in this is the fact that the snare drum is so central to the piece in the orchestral version. And the snare drum has all the military connotations that you need. So suddenly, when you're just sitting there at the piano, and instead of being able to actually make that sound and you're trilling on notes, it never sort of felt right to do it like that. So what I did was I tried all sorts of things. I think somebody could have made a very funny video of me trying to make a snare drum sound at the piano. I tried a few things where I put a piece of paper in the piano and I put some like coins on top of it and tried to see if that would make sort of a rattling sound. Didn't work. What else did I do? I actually tried having a drum beside the piano, but then realized that I wouldn't be able to drop the drumsticks fast enough to actually get back to the keys. So that was also
outtakes, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the final solution that ended up working pretty well was basically using my fingers to stop the strings inside the piano. So you get kind of a dead sound that's almost without pitch. That was my idea, was to try and get rid of the...
It's really interesting.
So you end up with as close to a drum-like sound as the piano can make. And
Wow.
so, I was happy to figure that one out. And I think the way that we ended up putting the piece together, it conveyed the right kind of atmosphere, and the drums were close by, if not right in our ears.
Yeah. I think the last song is Ich ging mit Lust durch einen grünen Wald, which is yours. That's sung so beautifully.
Thank you.
I think there's a little twist at the end of it, isn't there? That's what I think. Yeah.
Yes. An intrigue, shall we say.
Very much so.
But what I love about those arpeggios, and in fact, this was another bit of long distance magic with Carson, was to get the feeling of momentum when you find yourself at the top and how you fall again. And those kinds of timings, you would really normally want to be in the same room as the person you're performing with. But with I don't know, just a musical understanding, and after our rehearsals, somehow it just worked great. So I was very excited that that came together as well as it did.
That's wonderful. It really was a wonderful performance. I think the last thing I'd like to say about the whole of this is, now, from your own personal perspectives, as I say, John, you've really dealt with the editing of all of this, and it's a technical aspect as to what you feel you have learnt from this, or whether it's just a continuation of a process which you've been going through with other artists, particularly whether you've got this international dimension with the time difference as well, whether that's insurmountable or whether you think it's something now which is quite achievable. And if this dreaded COVID-19 is going to continue to not say blight people's lives, but affect people's lives, how you think this type of project and venture can actually overcome that?
Well, I mean, I suppose, you know, the bottom line is some things are better live, and music is definitely one of those things. And it's really a miracle or a result of very hard work that what you're about to hear sounds like the real thing, and it sounds like a live performance, and it sounds like the singer and the pianist are in the same room. But that is the result of a lot of hard work and a very unusual approach to having to kind of plan your performance and discuss it in the level of detail that otherwise would be mostly spontaneous. I'm speaking for you guys here, but from what I see in the way I have to put it together, that is the kind of hurdle in the way for creating something like this. So yeah, the end result is something that sounds almost like the real thing. But the process for creating that is much more arduous. I mean, I guess maybe it gave you a chance to think of these pieces in much more specific detail than usual. But I guess yeah, that's the kind of behind the scenes on it, is that it requires a lot more preparation and thought.
Yes, there's no shortcuts to this at all. And, no, it's to do with artistry as a result. Yes.
You almost sort of, it's like a total inversion of the usual process of performance, because usually when you rehearse, you're doing that in a way so that when you perform, you're not even thinking about, I don't know, the kind of nuts and bolts of what you're doing anymore, because you're so comfortable with the way that you're working with that person that it becomes spontaneous. So things happen on stage that you would never discuss in a rehearsal. And you're entirely responding to something that's happening around you. Whereas this process was the opposite. So we spent time rehearsing together, and then ironically, the actual performance, you're sort of totally alone in a small room. And you're doing the opposite of being spontaneous and responding to what's happening around you, because as soon as you do that, you're going away from the things that you know the other person you're going to be working with needs to make their performance work. Yes. So it does make you view the pieces differently. Just because you have to think about them so strategically, which is not at all how you would perform live. But having said that, I don't think that's a bad thing. I know these songs so much better than I think I would have had we rehearsed them in a more standard way. And actually, next time I perform them, hopefully in front of people. And I mean, I'd actually love to meet Florian and Caitlin in the flesh one day. It would be nice.
Yeah, we want to.
I'm sure it will happen before long. Yes.
That would be so great.
Hopefully at some point we can perform them together in a live setting. And I think that this process will mean that we'll arrive at a result that we probably would never have done had we just done that process. So it's all good, basically.
So what we're really saying is that there's no, in the way it's been a harmonious element for our married couple here,
There's no strife or anything like that. It's worked wonderfully. And everything is, is coming up with roses, etc. I think it's been a wonderful collaboration. I hope that you all work together closely in future if the opportunity arises. I think that's the point with the Gustav Mahler Society. What we're trying to do is get musicians together, help musicians as well, young musicians, professionals, to ensure that there are those contacts and everyone can enjoy each other's company and really excel. What I'd like to say to all of you is thank you so much for doing this. It's meant an awful lot to the society, our members, and for me as well. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, and long may these connections last. I'd also say absolute success in your careers. You deserve it, all of you, and for a sort of healthy future, and one which, as I say to all our members and viewers and listeners for that matter, make sure you keep safe, don't do anything silly, and be healthy and wise or whatever, but enjoy life. And that's, I think, ultimately is what Mahler is about. Thank you so much, everyone. An absolute pleasure. And now we're going to listen to Carsten's introduction. I won't say any more, but it'll be well worth watching. And also then the performance recital afterwards. Thank you very much indeed.